We are getting some breaking news crossing on another big AI investment, and for that, we're going to turn to Steve Kovac. Hey, Steve.
Hey there, Carl. Yeah, here we go with another big AI deal. This one is involving Anthropic, Microsoft, and Nvidia. So let me tell you what's going on here with all the numbers. Anthropic is saying it's going to spend $30 billion in compute from Microsoft. That would obviously be through the Azure service, and Nvidia, obviously, through their GPUs and chips. And they're going to contract up to 1 gigabyte of compute power on top of that. Also, on top of that deal that Anthropic is committing to, Nvidia and Microsoft are going to be investing in Anthropic, with Nvidia saying they're going to invest up to $10 billion, Microsoft up to $5 billion. Now, no details on what that up to exactly means and what sort of performance metrics or what have you Anthropic needs to meet in order to attract that investment. But very significant here because, of course, Microsoft is the primary backer of Anthropic's biggest rival, OpenAI. So now we're seeing Microsoft starting to not only open up its computing platform to these other AI companies and AI models, which it's been doing for some time, but also investing in these rivals to OpenAI. This is a very significant moment with respect to that. And also, we should just talk about these Anthropic models are now going to be hosted on Azure. They've already had some limited partnership going on here between Anthropic and Microsoft. Now the latest and greatest models are going to be available through Microsoft's Azure cloud services, whether that's for developers and things like that, presumably also making their way into more Microsoft products. Now, guys, I'm out here in San Francisco because it's the Microsoft Ignite conference, and I'm going to be talking during Power Lunch with Microsoft's new commercial CEO, Judson Althoff, about this new deal, about all of that, and about how they're going to be leveraging some of these new technologies into their Copilot products, guys.
All right, Steve, we talk about the circular nature of many of these deals, and this certainly seems to fit the narrative. Again, I know you've outlined it for us. Now, Nvidia and Microsoft are committing to invest up to $10 billion and $5 billion, respectively, in Anthropic.
Correct.
Last value for Anthropic, I believe, is $183 billion, at least the last time they raised any capital. Is this at a new level? Do you happen to know?
Yeah, they're not saying if this is at a new valuation or anything like that. And also, I'll just point out this $30 billion in commitment in spend from Anthropic. Anthropic's revenues are in like the low single-digit billions on an annual basis, I believe. So even less than what we've heard from OpenAI. So they would need to have quite an extraordinary growth rate, just like OpenAI is predicting, in order to meet this. And I will just again highlight this investment from Nvidia and Microsoft, David. It's a little loosey-goosey here. They're saying up to, and they're not exactly saying why or why not, they would go up to that amount. So presumably there are some metrics that Anthropic will have to hit to get that cash, David.
Right. And just to point out, so NVIDIA invests money in Anthropic. Anthropic commits to spending $30 billion with Microsoft. Microsoft buys NVIDIA GPUs to power the compute that is provided for Anthropic. So there's the circle to a certain extent.
Yeah, my head's spinning just hearing that.
Yeah.
The other thing, Steve, is how quickly that exclusivity with OpenAI, these relationships are splintering in real time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we've been watching this it's like the longest divorce ever, right, Carl? Watching OpenAI and Microsoft slowly drift further and further apart, becoming less and less dependent on it. And to your point, yes, when they had that new agreement just a few weeks ago, OpenAI no longer has to go to Microsoft for the right of first refusal to get into Azure. We've, of course, seen them cutting deals with so many others, and now Microsoft is playing the other side of that. Pretty soon after that OpenAI deal, boy, they go right after Anthropic, lock down some revenue from that company. And by the way, Anthropic's playing around too. They just had a big data center open up with Amazon and AWS, and that is part of their cloud provider too. Obviously, Amazon is a big investor, and Google as well in Anthropic, guys.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, also Anthropic, we think of as being one of the leaders in the enterprise versus ChatGPT, more consumer. I don't know how you're viewing this, or obviously the additional capital, what that will mean, but it certainly does seem to heighten the competition, at the very least, between these two leading large language models.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And look, OpenAI is a Microsoft competitor, David. I talk to CTOs all the time. I was talking to one who was telling me this last week and saying, we're going with OpenAI because they move faster. They are able to put out enterprise products and things faster. and better than Microsoft can. They use the Atlas browser as a really good example of that, saying, we would love to have a Microsoft version of an AI browser, but they can't do it yet because they sort of have to wait on OpenAI in order to develop it for the Microsoft customer. So seeing Microsoft kind of spread the wealth, so to speak, work with other models, it could perhaps help them move faster. And again, David, I'm out here at this Ignite conference because I'm expecting in a couple hours' time when Judson Althoff gives his keynote to kind of detail how these different language models are going to play into the Copilot product, which is what the consumer-facing side of AI for Microsoft. We know the cloud business is doing quite well, but we still haven't seen quite the fire and energy on the consumer-facing side yet.
Wait, so doesn't Anthropic and Microsoft compete for that enterprise business?
They do. Yeah, they're all frenemies, Sarah.
They all compete and they're all backing each other.
Exactly,
I mean, that's the concern with the circular part, right? If one piece here doesn't live up to expectations or has a problem, it brings them all down, I guess.
Exactly, and it also helps Microsoft spread the risk because so many of these deals that we've been talking about, Sarah, over the last couple months since the summer. So many of it has OpenAI at the center. I always say OpenAI is sort of like this Jenga piece. It's that one, you kind of wiggle it, it's firm, but it doesn't quite move as you want it. And if you move it too much, everything's going to come collapsing down. Microsoft is super exposed to that. We see it show up in their earnings report when there are losses over there at OpenAI and so forth. So we're kind of see Microsoft spreading the risk by investing in Anthropic and letting all these other competitors in, even though, yes, on the consumer-facing side, they're all competing with each other. But on the cloud side, Anthropic needs a partner like Microsoft, needs a partner like Nvidia to power all of this stuff.
And to get the funding, and they're getting more
funding,
and they're getting more funding because they're the startup.
And do the math here; they're
going to
spend $30. Yeah, they're going to spend $30 billion and potentially get $15 billion back.
Right. We don't know over what period of time they're committed to spending that.
No, we don't know that either. Yeah.
Committed to purchase $30 billion of Azure compute capacity.
Yeah, but it's over. I mean, it's not immediate. It's not like conceivably not in 1 year.
And they're getting an investment up to $5 billion from Microsoft, $10 billion from Nvidia.
Right.
Yes, these deals are just getting more creative. Thank you.
They sure are.
Steve Kovac,
Thanks, guys.
Huge news.